Hi there, Elevated Planet community. This is John Drew here. Today I have the great privilege of interviewing Miguel Mendonca. Miguel has a background in forestry and horticulture, journalism, geography and history, social science and environment. He's worked internationally as a researcher, writer and campaigner on renewable energy before becoming an independent researcher. He then published books on a range of themes, including ETs, hybrids, disclosure, the social history of the UFO topic, wisdom, and the art of creativity. He now makes music full-time as Sokomiru and has just released his second album titled Into Galactic.
My personal view is that no matter what your outlook on life, I think the best that we can do is to be kinder to ourselves, to each other, and the world in which we live, in whatever ways that is. I just think if we, instead of spending our time getting angrier and angrier at the news, at social media, in conversations with people that just drip negativity and nothing but, I feel like if we can just take that time, if we can figure out what's going to make me happy, what's fun, fun, man,
Right.
It's okay. You know, our entire way of life is about work, money, bills. It's bananas. And then you got to manage all that stuff once you've bought it and oh my God, and maintain it or sell it or get rid of it. Crazy. So,
100%.
you know, I just think taking time to get with your inner child. I mean, the Dalai Lama's meditation, or at least one of them, is about himself as a 7-year-old boy, as I understand it, and connecting with that kid in you through art, through being in nature, through swimming in the sea, whatever it is that you can do to remember what it was like to be a more clear, purified, almost simple version of yourself. You know, that thing when you're unburdened with stuff and the world of ideas. Like if you can do things that are physical and visceral and positively emotional, you know, you can cry in a positive way. You can remember somebody that you very much loved, and you can weep, but you can weep with a kind of happiness.
Right.
There are definitely ways, in other words, to cope with this experience, to make it a better one. And mine right now is making music. I mean, on the day that the Ukraine war broke out, I've never been so affected by any conflict. Never. You know, it was a reaction that I didn't see coming. And I think a lot of people have been kind of caught on the hop in that way. And I was trying to make music that day. I was in the middle of, I was just taking like a break, and I think I looked at the news and it said, yeah, it's starting. And it just messed with me to the point where I thought, well, I just can't create. I can't make happy music. And that's all I really want to do. And then I thought, wait, this is actually an opportunity to transmute my feelings into something. So given that the album I was working on was about being a different aspect version of myself off in the future, looking back on this time, I created a piece called The Distant Memory of War, in which this version of me is looking back at this moment and this conflict and how I feel now. But from that distance, it's all very attenuated. So it has this kind of sparse, ambient feel to it. And yet I know what it's about, and I know it was capturing the feelings that I had, and I felt purified on the other side of it. When I'd finished, it had just passed through me and allowed me, at least for that day, to cope. And that was, I think, my first real experience of what I would call art, which is that transmuting, that willful focus transmuting of experience into another form. And it was at that moment that I feel like I really understood the true power of art for the self, at least. I mean, and strangely, when I put the album out, I shared it with friends, and the reaction I got, people kept coming back to me and saying, "Yeah, I really like The Distant Memory of War." And I was like, that's crazy. I mean, all the rest of the album is so put together. It's so, I mean, a lot of those tracks are 30 hours of tinkering and work and minute adjustments. But The Distant Memory of War happens in like maybe an hour, something like that. That I just found the sounds, and I found the feel, and I found the tempo. I found it all really quickly. So I can only take from that something in that reached them.
Yes.
And maybe they really understood what I was saying, and it touched something in them. It reflected something in them.
I wonder actually also because like with the creative process, it's like when you look at music, some of the finest music of the last few decades, and the bands will say, oh yeah, we toiled over this album, we toiled over this album, this track which has been there forever and everybody loves, we made it in about an hour.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
kind of like you're almost channeling this is what's supposed to go out, right? Dark Side of the Moon is something like that. They were brought together to create this beautiful piece of music, and everything like happens. So I think that the creative process is not necessarily, it's not a toil thing. It's kind of when it just happens, that's real. That's kind of
Yeah.
connection to a
Yeah.
higher self. It's connection to something that's allowing you to be a channel for something that you're creating.
That's the thing. That's the miracle. And it happens in so many ways. I mean, you know, even when I was doing my books, I remember working on We Are the Disclosure, and 4 different people channeled in that, and I don't think any of them were aware. And I'll describe what happened. And I knew, I had that feeling, the pit of my stomach, that these people are all channeling. And when more and more and more were doing it, so what happened is they were chatting in the way that I am. It was a certain pitch, a certain frequency, a certain level, if you like. And then I'd ask them a certain thing, and they'd be chatting, and then there would be a pause, and the energy would go boom, and they would speak really slowly, really clearly, in perfect sentences, and give me a perfect paragraph. And then there would be a pause, and then it was like they came back into the room and blah, 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 blah. But those paragraphs were exquisite.
Yes.
And 4 different people, and I didn't tell them, but what was crazy is that the more it went on, the more I kept having those experiences, I started to open up to what that energy was as well, and have that feeling. Like I do Reiki, and anyone doing Reiki or anything like it is familiar with the feeling of energy running through you, that you know something's coming through. And I believe that every artist knows it. And it's not just artists. There are any amount of examples historically from artists, from musicians, from mathematicians, from chemists, from biologists, physicists, and so on and so on and so on, engineers and architects that dream these things, that suddenly get visions of things.
Yes.
And they go, oh, that's DNA. That's the DNA molecule, for example. And these people have said, I mean, I'm sure, I wish I had the quote from someone like Mozart, Beethoven. They said, I did not create this.
Yeah.
I was just a tool for this, you know. A vessel, you know. And that is to me one of the most fun experiences I think that you can have, which is why one of the reasons I think that art is so beneficial is that it, in the right space, it turns each of us into a channel for what it could be anything. I mean, my good friend Faye Vale has been doing channeled artwork for years. We did a book together called E.T. as Artist. Faye Vale, check it out. You know, you can find her stuff on her website, social media. It's on Amazon, and all of that stuff. I've seen her do it. That is the most incredible channeling that I've ever seen. Basically, she goes into like a light trance, and her hand just starts. It's like automatic drawing, and I was at her home one day, and I was doing stuff on the computer, and I suddenly realized, because I was so focused on what I was doing, that it took me a moment to realize that her voice, she sounded almost like she was under hypnosis. I've done regression. Obviously, we've all seen people being regressed, and we're familiar with the way that people speak. They're speaking like they're asleep in many cases. And I've listened back to my own regressions, and I've heard myself in regression because I wasn't switched off. I was still, conscious of the experience, if you like. And so I turned to see what was going on. And sure enough, somehow she had a pad on her lap and her hand just moving. And she was able to talk about what was happening while it was happening, but as an observer.
Yeah.
Saying, you can see, my hand just has a life of its own, and I don't know what it's doing. I have no idea. And sometimes she doesn't even know what the image is until she turns it 90 degrees or 180. And she goes, oh my God. And the thing is literally created upside down. It's wild.
Yeah.
I absolutely believe that she is genuine and authentic. She's one of those people. She's from Leicester, and she just tells it like it is. There's no filigree, there's no nothing. It's just here it is. And there's messages that come through, there's light language. Sometimes she has a back and forth with the being. She doesn't know who it is. She might ask for a name and write down some crazy bit of light language, or it could be a sort of English, an anglicized version of what that is, or how it sounds. And then sometimes there's just quotes that appear out of nowhere, and they are absolutely drenched in a kind of wisdom that I think most people can relate to. So to see somebody channeling in that way is the sort of reminder that I think all of us, when we slip into the flow state, that is the place in which we can connect, and we can reconnect, we can channel. And I feel like in general, it is one of the most healthy things that there is. There was the guy who coined the term, I cannot pronounce his name, an Eastern European academic, was basically doing a study of what makes a life well lived. So he was interviewing people who, if I remember correctly, there's a great TED talk on it, were really high achievers. I mean, these are people at the tops of their fields, and he just kept hearing the same thing from all these people, that the best moments in the work are when they are sort of detached from the ordinary level of consciousness, and they slip into an altered state, in a sense. Their brain waves are functioning differently. They're in a different kind of brain state, and things come through them that are not necessarily just passed via the left brain. Stuff shows up, and there's also a real joy in it, that they are totally, I mean, you see little kids, you know, how happy they are when they get the crayons out, or they get Lego out, or whatever creative thing it is, and they're completely focused in and joyful because of it, and they come out of it and they are calmer. You know, they've expressed something, they've been somewhere, and you get almost like a mini vacation. It's different to meditation, but I feel these are both routes to major mental health improvements on a momentary basis, a daily basis, and as part of a healthy lifestyle on a lifetime basis.
That makes total sense to me. You know, even like when I'm doing writing's always been my thing. And sometimes it just like happens. And it's usually when I have to stop and think about it and work at it tirelessly, that's just me. That's left brain working. But sometimes in a few instances, there it is. And it's just come from nowhere. But it has come from somewhere, but it's not necessarily the left brain. This is more connection somewhere else. And that was something, that's usually the quality piece of work. Anyway, I value your thoughts. I value your work. You know, what you're doing through this kind of stuff, it's a gift to the world, right? This is something that people can pick up on and learn, and you're sharing other people's work as well. And you've been connected with so many people and highlighting their work. And that's why I've got things like this as well, which is Juju's book. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of all a direct part of the ripple effect again, working positive ripple effect. Let's understand why we're here. Let's understand what this is really all about, rather than the small version that we are fed at the outset, that you have to kind of do something to consciously break out of that into a broader reality. It's all part of the journey. Truly appreciate your time, Miguel. And thank you to the Elevated Planet community for joining us here. So I truly appreciate your time.